Why did Chinese government offer to cut tariffs on Canadian canola in exchange for Canada cutting tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles? More importantly, why are they making that offer now? There's more to this than just a surface level offer, and we're going to unpack that. As we discuss this, I'd like you to think about what is the bigger geopolitical picture that Canada finds itself in at this moment. I'm Steve Sanford. You're watching Dominion Report. Folks, I have a bit of a cold, but I didn't want to delay this video, so I took all the drugs, and I'm just going to power through it. Just bear with me for this one today. Now, last year, China purchased nearly $5 billion worth of Canadian canola. In March of this year, China announced tariffs on Canadian agricultural goods, including canola, and so far they've purchased their canola from Australia and India, but none from Canada. Their canola tariff was in response to Canada's 100% tariffs on electric vehicles from China. And to understand this whole scenario, we need to explore this EV thing a little further. Canada and the US both imposed tariffs on Chinese EVs last year, and the official reasoning, as with most tariffs, was unfair trade practices. Unfair trade practice happens when a foreign government subsidizes the production of goods, and those goods, once imported, have an unfair price advantage thanks to those government subsidies from where it was manufactured. And I'll point out here that the US government has subsidized Tesla to the tune of many, many millions of dollars. So if we're applying tariffs by that standard, why are we not applying them to Tesla? Instead, we're, of course, offering taxpayer-funded purchase incentives. So unfair trade practices is probably not the actual reasoning for these tariffs on Chinese EVs. What is the actual reasoning? As with most tariffs, probably the protection of domestic auto manufacturing in Canada and the US. And that's because Chinese EV manufacturers, companies such as BYD and Geely and others, have developed high quality and affordable EVs. Chinese manufacturers have invested heavily in renewable technology. That's something I've spoken about in a bunch of different videos, including the one that I made about peak oil demand. And actually, that's kind of all related to this topic, so I'll put a link to that one below in case you're interested to watch it. Now, most of us here in Canada are not that familiar with Chinese EVs, but they have evolved to be among the best in the world, and that's from a quality point of view as well as an affordability point of view. As one example, let's look at the BYD Dolphin. This car is about the size of a Honda Fit. It has a range of over 400 kilometers. It's 4 doors, 5 seats, rapid charge system, whole bunch of the standard onboard electronic features that you would expect in an EV. If the Dolphin were to be sold in Canada, tariff-free, it would likely sell for somewhere between $30,000 to $32,000. And from a features and specifications point of view, lines up pretty close to the Chevy Bolt, which currently sits at $39,000. So cutting the tariff would absolutely disrupt the auto sales in Canada, and that would threaten the current makeup of our domestic auto manufacturing industry. But, that said, the auto manufacturing industry is already under threat by American tariffs. Ontario auto manufacturers and auto parts manufacturers have been involved in an ongoing and integrated relationship with their US counterparts for many decades. The parts that are on a given vehicle may cross back and forth across the border several times before the vehicle rolls off the assembly line. So, pardon me, I'm talking about manufacturing of steel and aluminum may cross the border, and that gets manufactured into a bolt, a nut and a bolt, and that might cross the border, and that might go onto a frame assembly, and that might cross the border, and that frame assembly becomes part of a car seat, and the car seat gets crossed back and put into a vehicle. So the recent U.S. tariffs introduced by the Trump administration have presented a significant challenge for, especially when considering those tariffs every time it crosses the border. Ontario's Financial Accountability Office has projected that the industry will lose over 68,000 jobs in 2025 if U.S. tariffs persist. And 2026 would be quite a bit worse. So the question becomes, if Chinese EV tariffs are protecting the auto industry, what exactly is it protecting? And this brings us back to the recent offer presented by the Chinese ambassador to Canada. Now, it needs to be said, Chinese ambassadors don't just throw out statements like this willy-nilly and to sort of see what sticks. That's not how the Chinese government works. They're known to be quite intentional in their statements. And so you can be sure a lot of thought and discussion and policy development went into this. So what is their thinking? On the face of it, it appears like they want to be able to sell their EVs into the Canadian market. And they probably also want to buy our canola. They couldn't actually source enough canola, at least not in the same quantity that they bought previously from Canada. Canola is used for fertilizer, for food oil, and many other things. So they probably actually want to buy it from us. So buying canola from us and selling EVs to Canadians, right? But there is actually a bigger picture here. China's GDP is the second largest in the world after the United States and is growing at double the pace. China will surpass the United States as the largest economic market. The only question is when. It's safe to say that China is actively working on achieving that as soon as they can. By using canola tariffs as a bargaining chip, China can encourage the joint Canada-US auto manufacturing partnership to decouple. Weakening that partnership hurts both Canada and US auto manufacturing industries, but for China, it would assist with their efforts to become the dominant financial force in the world. That all said, whichever country, Canada or the US, first breaks the apparent agreement to tariff Chinese EVs and allow China into their market has the opportunity to work with China to develop a separate auto manufacturing partnership. I'm talking about not just allowing China to sell EVs in Canada, but to partner with them to develop factories to build Chinese EVs in Canada. We currently have factories that build Japanese cars and American cars, so why not Chinese cars? That is the opportunity that Canada has at its doorstep right now. Mark Carney has told us that the old relationship with the United States is over and that they have proven to be an unreliable partner. Developing Canadian trade, east and west, across oceans, is exactly what Carney was elected for. Now, doing this would severely piss off the United States. Carney's walking a fine line with Donald Trump. He's trying to maintain good rapport. He's trying to avoid the wrath of a dementia-addled narcissist who has his hands on significant levers of financial might and military power. That's a challenge. There certainly is a risk to be considered. That said, as a country, we need to decouple from the United States. And if the US is the one that has applied the tariffs on our auto industry, and Donald Trump has publicly stated many times that they don't want to buy cars from Canada, what choice do we have? I think this could be a golden opportunity for Canada. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.